Xiaomi has just launched their 12T Pro. It has a 200 megapixel sensor from Samsung, their HP1, with optical image stabilization and an f1.69 8P lens to it. So does it live up to the hype? 200 megapixels, will it have noticeable shutter lag? Will there be some slowdowns, some delays? Can it compete with other flagships? Can we actually take a photo with the full 200 megapixel sensor readout? I'll be answering all of those questions along with the other cameras that this phone does have in this detailed camera review of the Xiaomi 12T Pro. Using the stock camera application, we have a lot of options here from Xiaomi if you're unfamiliar with their camera app. So you see on the left here, we've got AI controls. Now, I normally do not enable this because it will often overdo the photos, I find personally. It will oversaturate things, and sometimes the colors are just way too punchy. So I keep that disabled, but it's personal choice there. Then we've got our HDR options. You can set that to auto, you can force it on or turn it off. I normally just keep that on auto, let it decide. And we've got different options there too as well that you can select up here, you can see. So you've got voice shutter, movie frame, you've got your macro, which is only 2 megapixels, a timed burst shot, and your timeouts there. And I have guides on normally just to help me make sure I've got the horizon level. So with this sensor here, this is the 200 megapixel. It's f1.69 the aperture. Then we have an 8 megapixel ultra wide. So this one, not very good quality. It can only shoot 1080p video, unfortunately. So we've got digital zoom up to 2 times here. Now, is there any shutter lag? I know a lot of people are probably asking that. No. Okay, when you take a photo, it's pretty much instantaneous. Now, if you tap here and tap again, you can use a 5 times or a 10 times digital zoom. But once you go over about 3 times, it tends to look a little bit washed out like an oil painting. I personally would not use it. So we have our portrait mode. You can select the aperture right here, the blur, the amount of blur you want. Night mode. Night mode works on all of the cameras. It also works on the front-facing camera too. Under more, we've got various different other options, as you can see, like time-lapse, long exposure, vlog, and Ultra HD. A lot of people probably have this question. So by default, when you go into it, it's 50 megapixels. However, on the left, you see this option here, 200 megapixel. Tap that, and you can take what is called by Xiaomi a 200 megapixel Ultra HD photo. Then you can easily just disable that. Now, under video, let's take a look at the options we do have. So with the main sensor, we've got this 1080p 60, 30, 4K, we've got 60 and 30, and then 8K, it's only 24 frames per second. You can also shoot low quality 2 megapixel macro videos that are just hopeless, not really worth it at all. And there is no higher speed modes there, okay, for what we're looking at is just 60 frames per second. No 120 there, unfortunately. So with the documents, that's the document mode. They've probably taken that from Xiaomi. And the Pro mode, finally. This is my favorite. They've got a lot of options here. I really do like it. So you can see here we've got our exposure peaking there. We've got audio peaking, audio levels. You can tap here on the upper left-hand corner. You can set what resolution you want, what frame rate you want. You've got a log option, which is really good if you need to grade the video, if you wanted to do that. We've got focus peaking, so turn that on now. Exposure verification, and of course 8K 24. You can actually use the manual settings here too. Now the ISO, this goes all the way up to, let's have a look. It goes all the way up to, I think it is 6,400. And our shutter rate, we can take that all the way up to 30 seconds. So there's lots of options there. You can do this with both the camera mode and the video mode. And also, if you're in the camera mode, you can shoot RAW right there, as you can see. 200 megapixel main sensor. It's my first time testing out this sensor. So we've got 4K 30, 4K 60, 8K 24 frames per second. And it does have optical and electronic image stabilization. So just walking ahead here to test it out. That stability seems to be reasonably good. And I've had no issues with the focus, at least not in these lighting conditions. It's very bright. So the aperture is f1.69, and I can apply some digital zoom here. So that is now 2 times. That's 2.1. And if I pull back, it won't go over to the ultrawide because the ultrawide camera can't shoot 4K, so that is a bit of a letdown, just like the audio quality. The ultra-wide does not look nearly anywhere as good as that main camera. It just looks all washed out because, well, it's only 1080p as well. But the lens, look at the edges, very blurred. So it does use electronic image stabilization. And I'll just jog up these stairs here. You can see it's alright, the stabilization. But I certainly won't be using this 8 megapixel sensor a lot at all. So I think they should have gone with a 13 megapixel ultra-wide. And perhaps give it autofocus. It could be used as a macro camera there, but it just seems that they've cheaped out here when it comes to the ultra-wide. So the front-facing camera is a 20 megapixel camera that we've seen a lot of, and it has an f2.4 aperture lens. It's only 1080p, that's all you can shoot with maximum. The electronic image stabilization, as you can see as I'm walking along here, is not too bad, but really Xiaomi needs to up their game. This should be 4K at least. Now being on flagship phones, 4K 30, 4K 60 would be good. Audio bitrate is also disappointing. It is only 96 kilobits per second. They need to address this with a firmware update. 8K video sample now, so this is only 24 frames per second. So as I pan around, even though it's really slow, it probably looks a little bit choppy. Now it is not using electronic image stabilization, just the optical. And you can shoot a maximum of only 6 minutes at 8K. It's probably to stop the phone from overheating. It does seem quite steady as I walk along here with that optical image stabilization. Better than I thought it would be. 4K 60 frames per second, so obviously this is a lot smoother. A lot of people do like this. It just smooths out the motion more than, of course, 30 frames per second. So just going to jog ahead here. And it's looking pretty good. Over to our photo quality now during daytime here. So this is a 200 megapixel photo. It is a whopping huge 57 megabytes. It allows us to crop into the photos and still get an amazing amount of detail. As you can see now, I've cropped in quite a bit here. The more you crop in, you do start to see a bit of noise come into play here. I've seen the same with 108 megapixel sensors, and you notice there's more noise, but you're just gaining so much more in detail. So if you're someone that loves to crop into photos a lot, you are going to love the sensor and the 200 megapixel mode. By default, this sensor does give us a 12 megapixel pixel bend photo, and they are excellent. Lots of detail. Just look at the little fine hairs around my cat Vera's nose here. It's looking great. And this photo to me is starting to look almost like, is this actually taken on a cell phone or was it a DSLR? Portrait photos have been really good on this phone, and I am really impressed with the color rendition here. The stitching seems to be excellent. And even this shot, that's indoors, not the best lighting conditions. And then outdoors, you can see the stitching again. Look at that. The outline of my daughter's shirt around her hair. It's done a really good job. Excellent. I do like the colors they're using for portraits. Even the selfie portraits. So this is just a standard shot here. Then the portrait mode, it has blurred the background nicely. Good stitching. And it even got it around my sunglasses. This Samsung HP1 can take some stunning photos. Very clear, lots of detail. But what about digital zoom? This is 2 times now. Very usable. It looks good. And they'll even go as far as 5 times now, which is okay. I wouldn't say it's an amazing shot, but for some people, that's still going to be usable. Not bad considering it has no optical zoom cameras. Now, if there was any camera that was disappointing, it would be for me the ultra-wide camera. Now, it does have a 120-degree field of view. On a good day, it can take a very good photo, but when you crop in, when you take a look at the edges, when you look at the overall shot, it's lacking a little bit. It's not up to the standard of the main camera, so it is a bit of a letdown for me. So the main sensor does take really good photos, but it does have one area of weakness I have noticed, and that is the processing of very bright flowers. So this red flower here, it's clipping, it's oversaturated, it is overdone, so not an amazing shot. If you plan to take lots of photos of bright flowers, you're going to be disappointed. Then our night photos, they are very good. Now the difference between a night shot and a normal shot, there's barely anything. I would just use the normal photo mode. You can see from these samples, it's looking good. Now, the ultra-wide is the weaker camera, as you'd expect for low light. It doesn't hold up very well at all, often looking
quite blurry, just lacking details and not amazing. It's only an 8 megapixel sensor. It's not a high quality sensor either. And no, I haven't forgotten the macro camera. 2 megapixel images, they look terrible. We don't even need this camera. I don't know why they have it.
Now that main sensor, it really does have huge potential. Now Xiaomi hasn't really had a lot of time on with it, have they? It's just come out, this phone, we're on basically the first firmware, and even now I'm seeing some scenarios where this sensor with Xiaomi's optimization has actually competed or gone head to head with some top flagship phones that are a lot more expensive, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, the Galaxy S22 Ultra, and in a couple of scenarios there, it actually did end up, I feel, beating them. So that's why the sensor's got a lot of potential to it, and no, it's not actually all hype. Really good to see, considering the price point of this phone being cheaper than those others there. Now, there are some areas where software can improve things, so I hope that Xiaomi can fix the audio bitrate for video quality. It's terrible. 96 kilobits per second is just not acceptable. At one point, they were using 320 kilobits per second with phones like their Mi 11 Ultra, but they seem to have dropped that for some reason. They forgot to change that single line of code, which I know it actually is. The front-facing camera, well, no 4K video with it, and the ultra-wide, it's not a great camera, really. And then we have a 2 megapixel macro camera, which really no one's going to use. It's not that good at all. It shouldn't be there. So they should focus on giving us a better ultra-wide, I hope, with future models. So, of course, there are Gcam ports you could probably test out. You can probably squeeze more out of that main sensor or just a different style of photo, but really good to see where things are going and the direction that they're taking Xiaomi, at least with the 12T model here. So we do have another video, of a camera comparison of this up against the S22 Ultra, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, which I briefly showed you in this video. And then there's the full in-depth review of the 12T Pro. If you want to know the rest of the story of this phone, how's the battery life? What's the screen like? What is its performance like? Does the ROM have bugs? Is it fast? I answer all of that in those videos, so do check them out. And thanks a lot for watching this camera review of the 12T Pro.